So, there has been a very common question that's been coming up in a lot of my videos, and it has to do with this, the DJI MAVIC Air. You guys may have seen a couple months back I picked up this drone and did a little video flying around downtown Portland, and I've been using it in some of my recent videos for B-roll. And a lot of people have been asking how I get a good looking image out of this drone. It's, sub $1,000, so how is it possible it can create a good looking cinematic image? Don't you need a DJI Inspire 2 for that? Well, I beg to differ. So in today's video, I want to show you guys everything that I do to get the most out of the DJI MAVIC Air and get that cinematic looking footage that you guys all crave. So, probably one of the most important things when we're out shooting with our drone is to pick the right shooting conditions. Now, I realize when you're out shooting, you don't necessarily always have control of the weather, of the environment, of the lighting, but if you do have the option to pick a specific time of day when to go out and shoot, really good times are, of course, golden hour. You never want to shoot at midday when the sun's way high up in the sky. So, that's why a lot of people shoot at sunrise, or in this case, in the evening toward golden hour. But if you don't have the time to go out and shoot during that time, you can actually shoot on days like this, where we actually have some clouds in the sky that's going to act as diffusion for that hard light, which unfortunately we're having a break in the clouds right now. It's getting really bright. Oh my God, so yeah, not this. So probably one of the most important things to have with your drone, along with extra batteries of course and memory cards, is ND filters. Polar Pro was kind enough to send me out a variety of their ND filter kits. So why are these ND filters important? Well, when you're shooting outdoors, it's important to get the right exposure settings for your image. There's this thing called the 180-degree shutter rule. And basically what that is if you're shooting at, let's say, 60 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be double that. So that would effectively mean our shutter speed should be 1/125th. Why is this important? It's gonna give us the right looking motion blur. When you're moving the camera side to side or panning across objects, in this case flying across objects with the drone, you're gonna see blur within the objects that are coming in and out of the frame. So when your shutter speed is too high, you're going to eliminate a lot of that motion blur, which is crucial in getting a cinematic looking image. Vice versa, if your shutter speed's too low, there's going to be too much motion blur. So when we nail that perfect 180-degree shutter, you'll actually get the best looking motion blur, which is super important when you're doing moving shots with your drone. So when you're outside getting ready to film, it's really helpful to have a kit of ND filters like this one, where we have a variety of different stops of neutral density filters, as well as some ones with polarization, but that's for a different video. From there, you're going to pick the one that's going to give you the correct exposure. Now, sometimes you might be outside when it's insanely bright out and you're going to need some heavier ND filters. Polar Pro offers some even darker ND filters. We have a 7-stop, 8-stop, and a 10-stop. These are for like the brightest of days or even long exposure photography if you're thinking about doing that. They also have these graduated ND filters, which are going to be like lighter on the top and darker on the bottom, or other way around, dark on the top, lighter on the bottom. So if you're trying to shoot a sunset or something like that, where you want to darken the sky, but leave the ground a little bit lighter, that's where you'd use these. It's extremely easy to throw these ND filters on. They basically just thread onto the front camera, just like that. Okay, so before we get into more of these tips, I want to talk to you guys about the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. If you guys haven't heard of Skillshare before, it's a really cool subscription-based platform that has thousands and thousands of courses on pretty much anything you could want. Us creators, we like to see things from cinematography and photography and maybe business. They have all of that stuff. I've personally been really into this course from Ryan Booth, DIY Cinematography. Super good course for anybody who's looking to kind of step up their skills with lighting and camera work within kind of natural environments. So the premium membership starts at around $10 a month, but for the first 150 people to sign up with the link down in the description, you guys are gonna get 2 months for free. So I highly suggest you guys do that. I've personally been loving it. It's super valuable to me, so I think you guys should check it out. So click the link down in the description, but back to the tips. Now, of course, the last thing to consider when you're shooting with your drone is to make sure you're using the best settings possible. I'm gonna show my settings on the screen here so you guys can see, but I really like to use Cine Light D because it gives me a nice flat image for color grading, and then also making sure your white balance is correct. You can do other things like slowing down the pitch movement speed of the gimbal, so when you're doing those sort of shots that has the camera moving up and down, you'll actually get smoother movement instead of having to kind of feather the dial back and forth, which usually results in like choppy, juddery movements that never looks appealing. So if you slow down that movement speed to something like 5, you can get much smoother, more controllable movement. So there's a little known trick that I always like to do whenever I'm shooting with my drone. Of course, I'm gonna be shooting in 4K, but my frame rate, a lot of people shoot in like 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. The DJI MAVIC Air can only do 4K at up to 30 frames per second. Now, a lot of people avoid 30 frames altogether just because 24 is the best way to go, but not a lot of people realize that you can actually slow down 30 frames per second by 80% and effectively bring it down to 24, but it slows it down just a hair to give you this almost surreal feel. It's not quite slow motion, you kind of have to just see it, so I'll show you some clips here. So that's it. That's what I got for you guys on getting the most out of the DJI MAVIC Air. Of course, these will still work if you have the Mavic Pro or the Phantom or something like that. But that's what I got. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, if you got some tips that were useful to you. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.